As you settle into this moment of rest, allow your body to find its most comfortable position. Feel the weight of the day gradually lifting from your shoulders, your thoughts beginning to slow their rapid pace. Tonight, we'll be exploring the remarkable inner landscape of one of history's most fascinating minds, Nikola Tesla, a dreamer whose visions of electrical possibility transformed our world. This journey isn't about dates or achievements, but rather about understanding the quiet currents that flowed through Tesla's consciousness, his perceptions, his sensitivities, his unique way of seeing the unseen. As you prepare for sleep, we'll wander through the corridors of his thoughts, exploring not just what he created, but how he experienced the world around him. There's no need to memorize or analyze anything we discuss. Simply allow these gentle reflections to wash over you like soft waves on a shoreline. Some might capture your imagination, others might drift past unnoticed, and either is perfectly fine. This is a space for curiosity without effort, for learning without strain. Take a moment now to notice your breathing. Perhaps it's already beginning to find a slower, more natural rhythm. With each breath, you might feel a subtle letting go, a surrender to the present moment and to the approaching gift of rest. Our exploration of Tesla's mind will unfold with the same unhurried pace as your breath, moving from his earliest perceptions to his deepest wisdom. Along the way, we'll pause often, allowing silence to become as meaningful as sound. Let's begin. Our journey now stepping quietly into the remarkable inner world of Nikola Tesla, inventor, visionary, and lifetime student of nature's most profound mysteries. Entry Reflections. In the dim light of his New York hotel room, Tesla would often sit completely still, watching the subtle play of energy around him that others couldn't perceive. He described seeing luminous clouds floating in the air, shifting, and dancing in response to certain thoughts or emotions. While many dismissed these visions as mere imagination, Tesla understood them as glimpses into the invisible electrical nature of reality, a reality he seemed uniquely attuned to perceive. These quiet moments of perception, far from the laboratory and the public eye, informed his most profound insights about the interconnected energetic nature of our universe. Throughout his life, Tesla maintained an unusual relationship with numbers divisible by 3. He would walk around buildings 3 times before entering them, request hotel rooms whose numbers were divisible by 3, and count his steps as he walked. Rather than mere superstition, this practice seemed to provide him a sense of order and harmony in a world that often felt chaotic to his highly sensitive perceptions. The rhythmic predictability of mathematics offered him a sanctuary of pattern when the sensory world became overwhelming. When inspiration came to Tesla, it often arrived not as abstract thought, but as fully formed visual imagery. So detailed, he could examine his inventions from every angle before building them physically. While working on his alternating current motor, the invention that would eventually light the world, he wasn't manipulating equations on paper, but was watching the motor spin in his mind with perfect clarity, observing its operation as though it already existed. This remarkable visualization ability allowed him to identify flaws and make improvements before a single piece of metal was shaped, turning his imagination into a perfect testing ground. In the presence of thunderstorms, while others sought shelter, Tesla would often stand transfixed, watching with reverence and recognition. From childhood, he felt a profound kinship with lightning, as though the electrical displays in the sky were speaking a language his mind inherently understood. These moments weren't merely appreciation of natural beauty, but felt to him like conversations with a phenomenon that shared his essential nature. The thunderstorms that frightened others revealed to Tesla the awesome power he would later harness in more controlled forms. Throughout his life, Tesla maintained a practice of intense mental exercise that he believed strengthened not just his memory but his ability to perceive the underlying order of the universe. Each night before sleeping, he would revisit his childhood home in perfect detail, walking through each room, noticing the texture of surfaces, the play of light through windows, the arrangement of furniture. This wasn't mere nostalgia, but a disciplined practice of mental precision. By maintaining such vivid connections to his past experiences, he kept his unusual powers of visualization sharp and ready for the demanding work of invention. Deep explorations. Early influences. The rhythm of Tesla's childhood was set by the constant turning of the water wheel near his home in Smiljan, Croatia. Hours would pass as young. Nikola watched the wheel's hypnotic movement, observing how flowing water transformed into rotating motion. This early fascination with conversion, how one form of energy could become another, planted seeds that would later bloom into his most significant insights about electricity. The water wheel became his first teacher, demonstrating principles his mind would later apply to electromagnetic fields and currents. On summer evenings, Tesla would often lie in the grass watching the sun's descent behind the Croatian mountains. The gradual transformation of daylight into twilight held a particular fascination for him, not merely for its beauty, but for what it revealed about the nature of light itself. He noticed how colors shifted and blended, how shadows lengthened and deepened, how the quality of illumination changed as the angle of sunlight altered. These patient observations, undertaken with unusual intensity for a child, developed in him an intuitive understanding of optical principles years before he would encounter them in formal studies. Each sunset became a living classroom where nature revealed her secrets to a mind unusually attuned to her subtleties. The small parish church where his father served contained modest stained glass windows that created patterns of colored light on the stone floor. Young Nikola would position himself so these chromatic projections fell across his hands or face, experiencing directly how light could be filtered and transformed. The church space itself, with its resonant acoustics, also taught him about sound waves, how they traveled, reflected, and combined. Later in life, when working with various forms of electromagnetic radiation, Tesla would recall these early sensory experiences in sacred space as his first education in how waves move through environments. His father, a Serbian Orthodox priest, filled their home with books and encouraged philosophical thinking, yet it was his mother's inventive spirit that seemed to flow most directly into young Nikola. Nicolas Tesla, though unable to read until adulthood, possessed remarkable mechanical ingenuity, creating household tools and implements that improved their daily life. In the quiet evenings, Tesla would watch his mother's hands moving with purpose and precision, her mind solving practical problems without formal education. From her, he absorbed not just creativity, but a belief that practical problems existed to be solved rather than endured. The texture of domestic life in the Tesla household had a particular quality of orderliness that would influence Nikola's later preferences. His mother maintained meticulous arrangements of household items, objects always returning to their designated places after use. This wasn't mere tidiness, but a form of environmental harmony that created a sense of reliability and pattern. The young boy internalized these domestic rhythms, developing a lifelong preference for ordered environments where his sensitive nervous system could function without the disruption of chaos. Even decades later, in his New York hotel rooms, Tesla would arrange his working materials with similar precision, finding that physical order supported mental clarity. Winter evenings in the family home had their own particular atmosphere that nourished Tesla's developing imagination. With darkness coming early and snow often limiting outdoor activities, the family would gather around the hearth where his father would sometimes read aloud from literary works or share philosophical reflections. Young Nikola absorbed not just the content of these readings, but their cadence and rhythm, the musicality of language that later influenced his own writing style. These sheltered hours of familial communion provided a counterbalance to his frequent solitary explorations, teaching him that knowledge could be both a personal discovery and a shared inheritance. The dense forests surrounding his childhood home became laboratories of solitude where Tesla developed his unusual capacity for inner vision. Among the trees, away from other children and their games, he would close his eyes and conjure mental images that became increasingly elaborate and controlled. What began as childhood daydreaming evolved into a disciplined practice of visualization, so powerful that in later years he could conduct complex experiments entirely within his mind. observing results with the same clarity as physical sight. The local village craftsmen, the blacksmith, carpenter, and miller, became informal teachers who expanded Tesla's understanding of materials and forces. He would spend hours watching the blacksmith transform rigid metal into shaped tools through the application of heat and pressure, observing how substances could change their properties under different conditions. The carpenter demonstrated how understanding the grain and character of wood determined successful outcomes in building. The miller showed how different grains required particular adjustments to the millstones. These practical demonstrations of applied knowledge complemented his more abstract learning, giving Tesla an embodied understanding of physical principles that would later inform his engineering work. During his solitary wanderings, Tesla developed an unusual relationship with the birds of the region. He noticed their flight patterns, their social behaviors, their methods of navigation. With patience and stillness, he gradually earned their trust to the degree that some would feed from his hand or perch nearby without fear. This early connection with avian life developed into a lifelong affinity. In his later years in New York, his care for pigeons became legendary, not merely feeding them, but tending to their injuries and observing their behaviors with a scientist's attention to detail combined with genuine affection. This bond with creatures so different from himself revealed Tesla's capacity to bridge worlds that others perceived as separate. The death of his older brother Daniel in a riding accident cast a shadow across Tesla's childhood that would influence him in complex ways. Only 7 when this tragedy occurred, Nikola found himself living in the aftermath of his parents' grief and their redirected expectations. The quiet pressure to fulfill the promise of 2 sons rather than 1 created in him both a driving ambition and a sense of painful inadequacy, a feeling that no achievement could ever truly be enough. This early encounter with loss tuned his emotional instrument to a minor key that would sound throughout his life. In the aftermath of his brother's death, young Nikola began experiencing unusual states of perception, vivid flashes of light, intensely realistic images that appeared before his eyes, moments of insight that seemed to arrive from nowhere. While these experiences frightened him initially, he gradually came to recognize them as aspects of his unique cognitive functioning rather than supernatural visitations or signs of illness. Learning to navigate these unusual states became an early form of self-regulation that would later enable him to access extraordinary creative states while maintaining functionality in the conventional world. Teachers at his early schools initially misunderstood Tesla's unusual thought processes, mistaking his visualization methods for inattention or lack of discipline. One mathematics instructor, however, recognized something extraordinary in the boy's ability to solve complex calculations without writing intermediate steps. Rather than demanding conformity to standard methods, this teacher created space for Tesla's unique cognitive approach to flourish. This early experience of being truly seen and accepted in his difference became a sustaining memory during later periods when his unconventional thinking met with resistance or ridicule. The local library, modest though it was, opened worlds beyond Tesla's immediate environment. While other children might have been drawn to adventure stories or simplified texts, young Nikola sought out the most challenging material available, struggling through advanced works in multiple languages. He developed a method of constructing meaning from what he could understand, gradually building comprehension of difficult concepts through persistent engagement. This early practice of intellectual stretching established a lifelong pattern of self-directed learning that would allow him to master new fields with remarkable speed throughout his adult life. Tesla's first meaningful encounter with electricity came not through formal study, but through stroking his cat, Macaque, on cold winter evenings. The small sparks that jumped between his hand and the cat's fur awakened a curiosity that would shape his entire life's direction. What others might have observed as a minor curiosity became for Tesla a doorway into profound questions about the nature of energy. Even as a child, he wondered about the invisible force that created those tiny illuminations. What was it? How? Did it move? And could it be directed and controlled? The relationship with Macaque went beyond these electrical discoveries. Tesla developed a deep attachment to the animal, observing its movements, its hunting techniques, its methods of navigation in darkness. The cat's remarkable ability to land on its feet, regardless of how it fell, particularly fascinated him, suggesting principles of balance and motion that he would later explore in his mechanical designs. This intimate connection with a non-human intelligence expanded Tesla's conception of sentience and adaptation, teaching him that nature had evolved solutions to engineering problems long before human intervention. The landscapes of his childhood, the mountains, forests, and flowing waters of rural Croatia, imprinted themselves not just in Tesla's memory, but in his understanding of natural systems. Years later, when working with electrical currents, he would sometimes describe their behavior using metaphors of rivers, eddies, and watersheds. The patterns of nature he observed as a child became the conceptual foundation upon which he built his understanding of invisible electrical phenomena, translating the seen into insights about the unseen. The rhythm of agricultural life surrounding his childhood home provided Tesla with direct observation of natural cycles and their relationship to human sustenance. He watched how farmers prepared soil, planted seeds, tended growing crops, and finally harvested what had been cultivated. This cycle of preparation, initiation, nurturance, and completion would later inform his approach to invention, understanding that creativity follows similar organic patterns rather than linear progressions. The patience required in agriculture, the recognition that processes cannot be rushed beyond their natural timing, became an internal template that helped Tesla navigate the inevitable delays and setbacks in his later scientific work. Mental processes. Tesla's daily rhythms followed patterns most would find unusual, yet they provided the structured environment his uniquely sensitive mind required. He typically worked from noon until 3 a.m., finding that the relative quiet of night allowed his thoughts to flow without the disruption of daytime noise and activity. This wasn't mere preference but necessity. His hearing was so acute that ordinary sounds others barely noticed could become painful interruptions to his concentration. The night's natural silence created the conditions his mind needed for its most profound work. The transition from daylight to his working hours involved careful preparation. Tesla developed elaborate rituals to clear his mind of residual concerns and create optimal conditions for creative thought. He would arrange his working materials with mathematical precision, aligning papers, instruments, and reference materials according to patterns meaningful to him. These weren't arbitrary arrangements, but created a physical environment that reflected the mental order he sought to establish. Once preparations were complete, he would pause briefly, almost in meditation, before beginning the day's explorations. This threshold moment helped him cross from ordinary awareness into the heightened attentional state, where his most significant insights emerged. Within Tesla's thinking process existed a remarkable preliminary phase that few other inventors have described. Before actively working on a problem, he would enter a receptive state, quieting his analytical mind and allowing impressions and intuitions to arise without judgment. He compared this to casting a net into deep waters and waiting patiently. Only after this receptive period would he engage his more structured thinking, examining and developing what had emerged from these quieter depths. This balance between receptivity and analysis characterized his most productive periods. His note-taking methods were as unusual as his working hours. Rather than keeping conventional laboratory journals with sequential entries, Tesla maintained what he called thought registers, organized according to conceptual relationships rather than chronology. Ideas were mapped in elaborate networks, connected by lines indicating various types of relationships, causal connections, analogical similarities, contrasting principles. These visual representations allowed him to perceive patterns across seemingly disparate phenomena, identifying unifying principles that might otherwise remain obscured. For Tesla, these thought maps weren't mere records, but active thinking tools that evolved as his understanding deepened. When encountering a challenging problem, Tesla employed a method of mental oscillation, moving deliberately between focused concentration and complete detachment. He might work intensely for hours, then abruptly switch to reading poetry, taking a long walk, or engaging in conversation about art or philosophy. These weren't distractions, but essential components of his creative process. He understood intuitively what modern cognitive science has confirmed, that the unconscious mind continues working on problems when conscious attention is directed elsewhere. Tesla developed specific methods for accessing what he called the twilight state between waking consciousness and sleep. He found this liminal zone particularly fertile for certain types of insights, especially those involving dimensional thinking and spatial relationships. When facing a particularly challenging technical problem, he would sometimes deliberately induce this state by lying down in a darkened room and using breathing techniques to alter his consciousness while maintaining a thread of awareness focused on the question at hand. From these experiments in altered cognition came some of his most revolutionary concepts, arriving not as analytical solutions, but as fully formed visual and kinesthetic perceptions. The role of music in Tesla's mental processes extended beyond appreciation into active cognitive engagement. He found that certain musical compositions, particularly works by Beethoven, Mozart, and Serbian folk music from his childhood, created internal states conducive to particular types of thinking. Before sessions requiring intensive visualization, he might listen to specific musical passages that he had found empirically helpful in establishing the desired mental state. This wasn't mere preference or nostalgia, but a deliberate use of auditory input to create optimal conditions for creative thought. Tesla understood his own consciousness as an instrument that could be tuned through various environmental inputs, with music being one of the most powerful. Tesla maintained a lifelong practice of memorizing entire books, poems, and lengthy passages in multiple languages. This wasn't mere intellectual exercise, but a method of furnishing his mind with patterns and perspectives he could draw upon during his creative work. He described this accumulated internal library as a living resource, with different texts emerging into his awareness when their particular patterns or insights might be relevant to the problem at hand. His phenomenal memory became not just a storage system, but an active participant in his creative process. His memorization techniques themselves revealed much about his cognitive organization. Rather than using conventional mnemonic methods, Tesla developed a spatial approach, associating textual information with specific locations in detailed imaginary environments. A poem might be placed within a mental reconstruction of his childhood home, with different stanzas associated with particular rooms or objects. This method leveraged his extraordinary visualization abilities, transforming abstract information into navigable mental landscapes. When recalling this material later, he would simply walk through these memory spaces, retrieving the associated information with remarkable accuracy. Tesla's relationship with mathematical thinking differed fundamentally from most of his scientific contemporaries. While capable of working with formal equations when necessary, he primarily employed what might be called embodied mathematics, understanding relationships and transformations through physical and visual intuition rather than symbolic manipulation. Complex electrical relationships were comprehended as dynamic three-dimensional scenarios, rather than as equations on paper. This approach sometimes made communication with other scientists difficult, as Tesla struggled to translate his visuospatial understanding into the conventional mathematical language expected in scientific discourse. Physical movement played an essential role in Tesla's thinking routine. Long walks through the city streets or park pathways weren't merely for exercise, but were integral to his mental workflow. He found that the rhythm of walking synchronized his thoughts, helping ideas to arrange themselves into more coherent patterns. Some of his most significant breakthroughs occurred not while sitting at a desk, but while walking, the gentle pendulum motion of his body seemingly helping to harmonize the electrical activity of his brain. The particular quality of Tesla's walking practice revealed his complete absorption in inner processes. Observers noted that he moved through even the busiest New York streets with an unusual combination of precision and detachment, navigating crowds and traffic with what appeared to be peripheral awareness, while his primary attention remained focused on internal visualizations. He developed routes of specific lengths and configurations, knowing through experience that certain walking patterns facilitated particular types of thought. A complex conceptual problem might require a route with regular turns and variations, while a linear development of a single idea might be supported by a more direct path. Sleep held a complex place in Tesla's routine, both essential and sometimes elusive. Throughout his life, he experienced periods of insomnia so severe he would go days with only brief moments of rest. Yet rather than fighting against these wakeful periods, he developed methods of using them productively, entering states of quiet, contemplation that were neither fully awake nor asleep. In these liminal hours, free from external demands and expectations, some of his most original insights would emerge like visitors from another realm of consciousness. During periods of regular sleep, Tesla noticed correlations between the quality of his rest and the nature of his dreams. He kept detailed records of these patterns, observing that certain types of dreams predictably preceded particular qualities of creative insight. Dreams of flying or floating often preceded breakthroughs in conceptualizing wireless transmission, while dreams involving intricate mechanisms sometimes foreshadowed solutions to engineering problems. Rather than dismissing these patterns as coincidence, Tesla worked with them deliberately, developing methods to encourage dream states he had found productive for specific types of problems. This integration of dream consciousness into his creative process represented an unusual respect for non-rational cognition within a discipline typically dominated by logical analysis. Tesla's relationship with food evolved into a highly deliberate practice as he aged. Earlier in life, he enjoyed rich foods and fine dining, but he gradually simplified his diet to an ascetic degree, believing that digestion demanded energy his brain could better use for creative work. Each morsel was selected not primarily for pleasure, but for its precise nutritional qualities and ease of digestion. This calculated approach to nourishment reflected his broader perspective that the body was an instrument to be maintained in service to the mind's work, rather than a source of sensory enjoyment. His approach to eating became increasingly ritualized, with meals taken at precisely the same times each day, and consisting of carefully measured portions. Tesla would use exactly 18 napkins during a meal, polishing each utensil until it met his exacting standards of cleanliness. What might appear as mere obsession or eccentricity to casual observers was, for Tesla, a form of attentional discipline, a practice of bringing complete awareness to ordinary activities. This quality of deliberate presence extended to all aspects of his daily routine, transforming mundane activities into opportunities for cultivating the precise and focused attention his creative work required. Throughout his adult life, Tesla maintained a practice of visualizing energy fields and currents as having color, texture, and movement, a form of controlled synesthesia that allowed him to understand electrical phenomena through multiple sensory channels. When working on wireless transmission problems, he wouldn't see abstract mathematical relationships, but vividly colored patterns of interacting waves. This multisensory conceptualization gave him insights that purely analytical approaches might have missed, allowing him to perceive relationships between phenomena that remained invisible to others working in the same field. The quality of Tesla's visualizations evolved throughout his life, becoming increasingly sophisticated and controlled. In early adulthood, these mental images would sometimes appear unbidden, interrupting his ordinary perception. Through disciplined practice, he developed the ability to summon, dismiss, and modify these visualizations at will, transforming what might have been a cognitive liability into his greatest creative asset. He described establishing specific viewing distances for different types of mental work, standing back to perceive overall patterns in a system, moving in close to examine particular components and their interactions. This malleability of perspective allowed him to navigate between holistic understanding and detailed analysis within the same visualization session. Inner challenges. Behind Tesla's public image of confident brilliance lay periods of debilitating doubt that few were permitted to witness. During these darker intervals, he would question not just specific projects, but his entire life's direction and worth. What made these episodes particularly difficult was that they often followed his greatest achievements. moments when external validation was at its peak, but internal certainty had mysteriously vanished. These cycles of creation and doubt became a pattern he gradually learned to recognize without being consumed by them. These periods of doubt had a particular quality of existential questioning that went beyond ordinary discouragement. Tesla would find himself confronting fundamental questions about the value of technological progress itself, wondering whether his inventions would ultimately benefit humanity or possibly lead toward unforeseen harm. These weren't abstract philosophical considerations, but deeply felt concerns that could temporarily paralyze his creative drive. During such episodes, he would often retreat from both work and social contact, spending days in near-complete isolation, until the inner darkness gradually lifted and his sense of purpose returned. Friends who encountered him during these periods sometimes described him as appearing physically diminished, as though the withdrawal of certainty had affected his very life force. The transition out of these doubtful periods often involved a return to basic sensory engagement with the physical world. After days of internal struggle, Tesla might suddenly feel drawn to visit a park, to observe flowing water, or to watch birds in flight. These simple experiences of natural phenomena would gradually reawaken his sense of wonder and curiosity, reconnecting him with the direct perceptual knowing that preceded his more systematic scientific work. This oscillation between abstract conceptual struggle and embodied sensory knowing characterized Tesla's inner life, revealing the complementary ways of understanding that informed his genius. Tesla's acute sensory sensitivity, while enhancing his perceptions in ways that fueled his creative insights, also created profound challenges in his daily existence. Ordinary sounds could become unbearable. Certain textures would cause intense discomfort, and bright lights could trigger migraine headaches that incapacitated him for days. What others experienced as a normal sensory environment often felt to Tesla like an assault. He developed elaborate coping mechanisms, from specially designed living spaces to carefully timed daily routines that allowed him to function despite these heightened perceptions. The particular quality of Tesla's sensory sensitivities revealed much about his nervous system's unique organization. His hearing was so acute that he could detect the ticking of a watch 3 rooms away, yet he struggled to filter this information, all sounds arriving with similar intensity regardless of their relevance. Colors appeared to him with unusual vibrancy, sometimes seeming to pulse or shimmer, especially under emotional stress. These weren't mere preferences, but genuine differences in perception that required constant adaptation to a world designed for different nervous systems. His elaborate rituals and apparent eccentricities, viewed in this light, represent remarkable adaptations that allowed extraordinary sensitivity to coexist with practical functioning. During particularly difficult periods of sensory overload, Tesla developed a practice of mental displacement, temporarily shifting his conscious awareness into imaginary environments where he could control every sensory aspect. He would construct these internal refuges with extraordinary detail, complete with carefully modulated light, pleasant acoustic properties, and comfortable temperatures. While others might have perceived him as merely daydreaming during these episodes, he was actively managing his overwhelmed nervous system through a sophisticated form of self-regulation. This capacity to retreat into constructed inner worlds provided essential respite when external reality became too intense, allowing him periods of recovery without complete withdrawal from his work. The tension between Tesla's need for solitude and his hunger for meaningful human connection created an ongoing inner conflict. His most productive work required extended periods of isolation, yet complete solitude eventually led to a painful emptiness he couldn't endure. This contradiction was never fully resolved, but rather managed through carefully structured social routines, regular dinners with select companions, correspondence with fellow scientists, and occasional attendance at cultural events. These measured interactions provided essential human warmth without the overwhelming demands of deeper emotional intimacy. His encounters with potential romantic partners revealed this same tension in especially poignant forms. Tesla would occasionally form deep attachments to women who shared his intellectual interests or appreciated his vision. These connections would flourish initially, but as emotional closeness increased, he would experience intense anxiety about the potential impact on his creative focus. While he recognized and valued the depth these relationships might offer, he ultimately chose his work over personal intimacy. This pattern caused him genuine grief, not merely loneliness, but awareness of a form of human experience he had consciously sacrificed for his scientific mission. In later years, he sometimes spoke of this choice not with satisfaction, but with a quiet recognition of its necessary cost. Among Tesla's most trusted companions were several writers and artists whose thinking complemented his scientific focus. Unlike many of his technical colleagues, these individuals approached truth through metaphor, symbol and aesthetic perception rather than measurement and logical analysis. Tesla found that conversations with these creative minds sometimes unlocked scientific insights that purely technical discussions couldn't access. This interdisciplinary dialogue wasn't mere recreation, but an essential method of expanding his thinking beyond the constraints of scientific orthodoxy. The bridge between artistic and scientific perception that these friendships provided helped Tesla maintain crucial balance between empirical rigor and intuitive knowing. Throughout his life, Tesla navigated the challenging space between scientific focus and mystical perception. His direct experiences of reality included phenomena many would classify as spiritual or paranormal, visions, presentiments, unusual sensory experiences. Yet his commitment to empirical science required him to approach these experiences with analytical rigor, rather than mystical abandon. This internal dialogue between the empirical and the intuitive, wisdom patterns. Throughout Tesla's writings and recorded conversations runs a recurring insight about the relationship between observation and understanding. He frequently noted that true innovation comes not from imposing human concepts onto nature, but from patient, receptive observation of natural processes themselves. The scientific man, he once remarked, does not aim at an immediate result. He does not expect that his advanced ideas will be readily taken up. His work is like that of the planter for the future. His duty is to lay the foundation for those who are to come and point the way. This philosophy of patient observation manifested in Tesla's approach to problem solving. Rather than forcing solutions through sheer intellectual effort, he developed a practice of attentive waiting, creating conditions conducive to insight, and then allowing understanding to emerge at its natural pace. He compared this process to watching a sunrise. One cannot rush the dawn, but can position oneself optimally to witness its arrival. This receptive approach stood in contrast to the more aggressive problem-solving methods common among his contemporaries, revealing a fundamentally different relationship to both time and knowledge. For Tesla, understanding wasn't something to be seized through force of will, but rather received through properly aligned attention. The particular quality of Tesla's observational approach involved a deliberate suspension of existing theories and expectations. When investigating a new phenomenon, he would attempt to encounter it as if for the first time, temporarily setting aside conventional explanations. This disciplined naivete allowed him to perceive aspects of electrical phenomena that others missed because their observations were already shaped by established theory. The mind is sharper and keener in seclusion and uninterrupted solitude, he noted. Originality thrives in seclusion, free of outside influences beating upon us to cripple the creative mind. Be alone. That is the secret of invention. Despite his legendary focus on work, Tesla maintained a consistent perspective on the importance of periodic mental rest, not as resignation or indulgence, but as an essential component of creativity itself. He observed that many of his most significant breakthroughs emerged not during periods of intense effort, but in the receptive spaces between them. This wasn't mere anecdotal observation, but a principle he articulated repeatedly. The creative mind requires fallow periods to integrate experiences and generate new patterns, just as agricultural fields require seasons of rest to maintain their fertility. This wisdom about rhythmic alternation between activity and receptivity influenced Tesla's daily practices in concrete ways. He established regular intervals of complete mental relaxation throughout his working day, brief periods when he would deliberately suspend problem-solving efforts and allow his mind complete freedom. These weren't mere breaks for physical refreshment, but carefully timed opportunities for unconscious processing to occur without interference from directed thought. After years of self-observation, Tesla had discovered that these deliberate cessations of effort often preceded his most valuable insights, a pattern so reliable he came to trust and work with it intentionally. Tesla developed an unusual relationship with time that became increasingly evident in his later years. While most of his contemporaries worked within conventional time frames of months and years, Tesla often thought in terms of decades and even centuries. This expanded temporal perspective wasn't grandiosity, but a recognition that truly transformative innovations might require multiple generations to be fully understood and implemented. Some of what appeared as impracticality to his critics was actually a willingness to initiate processes whose completion he would never witness, a form of creative patience rare in Western technological culture. This extended temporal orientation influenced not just Tesla's major projects, but his daily decision-making as well. When considering which of several possible research directions to pursue, he would often choose based not on which might yield the quickest results or greatest personal recognition, but on which might establish foundations for developments that would unfold long after his lifetime. This prioritization of long-term impact over immediate results sometimes puzzled even his admirers, but reflected a deeply considered philosophy about the nature of meaningful contribution. For Tesla, true significance lay not in what could be, completed within a lifetime, but in what could be initiated, seeds carefully planted for future flowering. A quietly persistent theme in Tesla's reflections was the importance of simplicity. Although capable of understanding extraordinary complexity, he consistently sought the most elegant and direct solution to problems. What one man calls complexity, he noted, another calls beauty. For Tesla, the highest achievement wasn't creating elaborate systems, but rather discovering the underlying simplicity within apparent complexity. This principle guided his work on alternating current systems, where the profound simplicity of his approach eventually prevailed over more complicated alternatives. This principle of simplicity extended beyond technical design into Tesla's philosophy of living. Despite his periods of material luxury, he maintained an underlying minimalism in his personal possessions. What appeared to casual observers as eccentricity was often purposeful reduction, eliminating the unnecessary to create space for the essential. As he aged and his resources diminished, this philosophical minimalism made his material transitions less traumatic than they might otherwise have been. Having long recognized the distinction between comfort and meaningful experience, he adapted to changing circumstances with remarkable equanimity. Tesla maintained a lifelong conviction about the interconnected nature of phenomena that modern science would only begin to formally recognize decades after his death. His understanding that electrical, magnetic, light, and even gravitational phenomena were expressions of a unified field anticipated later theoretical developments. More remarkably, this wasn't merely an intellectual position for Tesla, but a directly perceived reality. He described experiencing these interconnections with sensory immediacy, as though his nervous system had evolved to detect relationships invisible to conventional perception. This perception of underlying unity influenced not just Tesla's scientific work, but his broader worldview. He described moments of profound recognition when artificial boundaries between disciplines suddenly dissolved, revealing unexpected connections between apparently unrelated phenomena. These weren't mere analogies or metaphors, but perceptions of genuine correspondence, patterns repeating across different scales and domains of reality. This holistic perception allowed him to transfer insights from one field to another, applying principles observed in mechanical systems to electrical challenges, or patterns from biological processes to energy transmission problems. Throughout his life, Tesla articulated a perspective on technology that balanced enthusiasm with caution. Unlike many innovators who became uncritical advocates for technological progress, Tesla maintained an awareness of potential negative consequences. "The present is theirs," he once said of more commercially minded inventors, "but the future for which I have really worked is mine." This future he envisioned wasn't one of technology for its own sake, but of innovations that would genuinely liberate humanity from unnecessary labor and environmental harm, a surprisingly contemporary ethical framework. This ethical dimension of Tesla's thought became increasingly pronounced in his later years. Having witnessed the application of his earlier inventions to warfare and environmental exploitation, he developed growing concern about the proper governance of technological power. This wasn't mere retrospective regret, but active consideration of how future innovations might be directed toward truly beneficial purposes. His extensive writings on the potential of directed energy for both destructive and constructive applications reveal this ongoing ethical reflection, a recognition that invention carries responsibility not just for what is created, but for how creation might be used by others. Tesla's vision of beneficial technology centered particularly on the relationship between human labor and creative potential. He foresaw a future where increasingly automated systems would liberate human consciousness from routine tasks, allowing greater focus on uniquely human capacities for creativity, relationship, and meaning-making. The human being of the future, he predicted, will stop eating dead animals and become a more sensitive instrument. This sensitivity wasn't merely physical, but intellectual and ethical, an evolution of consciousness made possible partly through technological advancement properly directed. As Tesla aged, he developed an increasingly nuanced understanding of the relationship between individual achievement and collective intelligence. While fiercely protective of his own contributions, he simultaneously recognized that no innovation emerges from a vacuum. "Our virtues and our failings are inseparable," he noted in a rare moment of philosophical reflection. "Like force and matter, when they separate, man is no more." This integration of apparent opposites, individual genius and collective wisdom, personal credit and shared heritage, represents one of Tesla's less recognized but most profound insights. This perspective on the collective nature of innovation influenced Tesla's approach to scientific dialogue. Despite his occasional conflicts with other inventors and corporations, he maintained extensive correspondence with fellow researchers, sharing observations and responding to inquiries with remarkable generosity. These exchanges weren't mere professional courtesy, but reflected genuine appreciation for the collaborative nature of scientific progress. Even when institutional science dismissed some of his more revolutionary concepts, he rarely responded, with blanket rejection of conventional approaches, instead seeking points of potential integration between established understanding and his own perceptions. Perhaps Tesla's most subtle wisdom concerned the relationship between materiality and energy. Decades before Einstein's famous equation formalized the relationship between matter and energy, Tesla was describing reality as primarily energetic rather than material. His perspective wasn't merely theoretical, but informed his daily perception. He described experiencing objects not as solid entities, but as patterns of vibration and energy. This perceptual shift allowed him insights into electromagnetic phenomena that eluded others, still conceptualizing electricity through mechanical analogies. This energetic perception extended into Tesla's understanding of consciousness itself. In his more philosophical writings, he suggested that thought might be understood as a particular pattern of energy rather than a mere byproduct of physical processes. These speculations weren't mystical fantasies, but extensions of his direct experience with electromagnetic phenomena. Having worked so intimately with invisible forces that produced measurable effects, he recognized the possibility that consciousness might operate through similarly non-material yet causally effective principles. These reflections anticipated later scientific discussions about the relationship between information, energy, and consciousness that continue in contemporary cognitive science. Tesla's wisdom about the provisional nature of knowledge remained consistent throughout his life. Despite the certainty with which he pursued particular innovations, he maintained awareness that all understanding represents a temporary approximation rather than final truth. The day science begins to study non-physical phenomena, he observed, it will make more progress in one decade than in all the previous centuries of its existence. This wasn't dismissal of empirical science, but recognition of its potential evolution. An understanding that today's revolutionary insight inevitably becomes tomorrow's conventional wisdom, eventually to be transcended by deeper perception. This recognition of knowledge's evolutionary nature fostered in Tesla an unusual intellectual humility, despite his revolutionary contributions. He could simultaneously maintain absolute confidence in specific insights born of direct perception, while acknowledging the inherent limitations of all human understanding. This balance between conviction and openness characterized his most productive periods and provided resilience during times of external criticism. By holding his understandings as working insights rather than absolute truths, he remained receptive to refinement and expansion, even of his most cherished theories. Among Tesla's most practical wisdom was his understanding of the relationship between physical health and mental clarity. Long before contemporary research on the body-mind connection, he recognized the importance of physical vitality for sustained creative work. His daily regimen included specific exercises designed not for muscular development, but for circulation, coordination, and nervous system regulation. He paid particular attention to breathing patterns, having observed through self-study the relationship between respiratory rhythm and quality of thought. These weren't merely personal preferences, but deliberate practices based on empirical observation of the conditions that supported or hindered his creative capacity. This attention to physical well-being extended to his understanding of sleep quality. Tesla studied his own sleep patterns meticulously, identifying optimal durations and conditions for different types of mental work. He discovered that certain creative problems benefited from the liminal consciousness of early morning, while technical refinements were best addressed during periods of full wakefulness. Rather than fighting against these natural rhythms, he structured his working schedule around them, scheduling different categories of tasks for the states of consciousness empirically shown to facilitate them. This pragmatic wisdom about working with rather than against natural cycles characterized Tesla's approach to many aspects of life. Perhaps the most profound aspect of Tesla's wisdom lay in his capacity to maintain wonder throughout his life. Despite profound knowledge of electromagnetic principles, he never lost his sense of awe at lightning storms or the subtle energies he perceived around living things. This wasn't regressive romanticism, but a sophisticated recognition that understanding enhances rather than diminishes the beauty of natural phenomena. In maintaining this balance between analytical comprehension and aesthetic appreciation, Tesla modeled an integration often lost in specialized expertise, the capacity to know deeply while continuing to experience directly, without conceptual frameworks exhausting the mystery of what is known. Universal connections. The patterns of Tesla's life echo ancient archetypal journeys found across human cultures. The sensitive child whose differences become strengths, the seeker whose visions are initially rejected, the creator whose gifts are both blessing and burden. His story resonates not because it is unique, but because it embodies timeless patterns of human experience and transformation. In his most personal struggles and triumphs, we can recognize elements of our own encounters with limitation, possibility, recognition, and misunderstanding. The particular quality of Tesla's childhood sensitivity, his unusual perceptual acuity, his difficulty filtering sensory information, his capacity for absorbing vast amounts of information, resembles patterns described across centuries and cultures in accounts of unusually gifted individuals. What modern psychology might label as sensory processing sensitivity has been recognized in various traditions as a distinct neurological orientation that brings both special capacities and unique challenges. Tesla's journey of learning to adapt to and ultimately leverage these neurological differences mirrors countless human stories of transforming apparent limitations into pathways of exceptional contribution. The evolution of Tesla's visualization abilities, from sometimes overwhelming childhood experiences to precisely controlled adult capacities, demonstrates a universal pattern of developmental integration. What begins as unregulated sensitivity gradually transforms through disciplined attention into refined perception. This journey from vulnerability to mastery, through acceptance and cultivation rather than suppression, reflects wisdom traditions across cultures that recognize the potential within apparent liabilities, just as the highly sensitive child becomes the perceptive adult. The overwhelming vision becomes the controlled insight. The disruptive force becomes the channeled power. Tesla's lifelong navigation between isolation and connection reflects a fundamental tension in human experience. His need for solitude wasn't merely personal preference, but a necessary condition for his particular form of creativity. Yet this same solitude, when extended too long, became a form of suffering. This delicate balance between separation and belonging, between individual perception and shared reality, represents a polarization most humans navigate in less dramatic but equally meaningful ways throughout their lives. This oscillation between solitude and community finds parallels in contemplative traditions worldwide, which recognize both the necessity of withdrawal for certain types of insight and the equal necessity of return to shared life. Tesla's pattern of intensive solitary work, followed by carefully structured social engagement, embodies this rhythm of retreat and return. His experiences during periods of extreme isolation, both the clarity of perception and the eventual emotional depletion, illuminate the complementary nature of these seemingly opposed states, suggesting that fullest human development requires both deep individuation and meaningful connection. The relationship between Tesla's remarkable visualization abilities and his physical creations demonstrates the perpetual human journey from internal perception to external manifestation. What begins as invisible thought, vision, concept gradually takes form in the material world through persistent effort and refinement. This transformative passage from immaterial to material, from private insight to public expression, represents not just an inventor's process, but the basic creative pattern underlying all human culture, from art and architecture to social institutions and technologies. This movement from conception to manifestation follows patterns described in creative processes across domains and traditions. The initial insight or inspiration, often arriving in moments of receptivity rather than effort, the period of internal development where the vision is clarified and refined, the sometimes arduous translation into communicable form, the adjustments required by material constraints, and finally, the release of the creation into the world where it begins an independent existence, influencing others in ways the creator might never have anticipated. Tesla's lifelong dance between vision and implementation embodies this universal creative rhythm, revealing both its exhilaration and its challenges. Tesla's ecological consciousness, remarkable for his era, connects his thinking to contemporary concerns about humanity's relationship with natural systems. His preference for harnessing renewable energy sources like water power, his concern about fossil fuel depletion, and his vision of non-polluting technologies anticipated environmental perspectives that would only become mainstream a century later. This foresight wasn't coincidental, but flowed naturally from his perception of energy as a unified field and his sensitivity to natural patterns. This ecological dimension of Tesla's thought reflected a particular relationship to natural systems, characteristic of many visionary thinkers across cultures and eras. Having experienced the natural world, not as a collection of separate objects but as an interconnected field of energetic relationships, he intuited the potential consequences of interventions within that field. His recognition that extractive technologies might disrupt essential balances wasn't merely theoretical concern, but direct perception of systemic connections often invisible to more mechanistic worldviews. This capacity to perceive the whole while working with the part places Tesla within a lineage of integrative thinkers whose insights often precede broader cultural recognition by generations. The rhythms of productivity and fallowness in Tesla's Creative life mirror natural cycles observed throughout the living world. Just as forests and fields move through seasons of growth, fruition, release, and dormancy, Tesla's creative output followed organic patterns of intense activity, followed by quieter periods of apparent inactivity that were actually essential for renewal. This natural oscillation between expression and receptivity, between giving and gathering, reflects cycles fundamental to all living processes. Tesla's sensitivity to these natural rhythms influenced not just his creative patterns, but his understanding of technological development itself. He recognized that innovation doesn't advance in steady, linear progression, but moves through periods of rapid breakthrough, followed by necessary integration and refinement. This cyclical, rather than linear conception of progress allowed him patience during apparent plateaus, recognizing them not as failures, but as essential consolidation phases preparing the ground for the next period of expansion. By aligning his expectations with these natural patterns, rather than imposing artificial timeframes, he maintained resilience through the inevitable fluctuations of his long creative journey. Tesla's complex relationship with recognition, sometimes receiving excessive praise for minor achievements, while his most profound contributions went unrecognized, reflects a pattern familiar to many innovators whose work transcends the understanding of their contemporaries. This misalignment between contribution and recognition isn't merely personal misfortune, but reveals how collective understanding necessarily lags behind individual insight. The seeds of new paradigms often require decades or even generations to be fully comprehended and integrated into the broader culture. The particular quality of Tesla's experience with recognition follows patterns observed across fields and eras when truly revolutionary insights emerge. Initial misunderstanding or dismissal, possible ridicule or marginalization, perhaps eventual acceptance of modified versions that fit more comfortably within existing frameworks, and only much later, sometimes posthumously, full appreciation of the original vision's scope and implications. This pattern isn't accidental, but reflects the necessary cognitive adjustments required when fundamentally new perspectives challenge established understanding. Tesla's navigation of this predictable cycle, maintaining conviction without bitterness, continuing to develop his insights despite limited external validation, demonstrates remarkable psychological resilience in service of authentic vision. The gradual vindication of many of Tesla's most contested ideas, from wireless transmission to robotics, from renewable energy to particle beam applications, demonstrates a recurring pattern in the evolution of human knowledge. Ideas initially dismissed as impossible or impractical gradually become accepted, and eventually obvious as collective understanding evolves to encompass them. This pattern of rejection, reconsideration, and eventual integration characterizes not just Tesla's specific contributions, but the overall advancement of human understanding across domains and throughout history. This evolutionary pattern of knowledge reflects more than mere stubbornness or resistance to change. Truly revolutionary insights often cannot be properly evaluated within existing conceptual frameworks. They require new measurement tools, new experimental methods, or new theoretical contexts to be fully understood. Tesla's work on wireless energy transmission, for instance, couldn't be properly assessed using the electrical engineering paradigms of his time. Only as understanding of electromagnetic fields evolved did the theoretical foundations for his practical demonstrations become widely accessible. This necessary lag between breakthrough perception and collective comprehension follows patterns observable across scientific revolutions throughout history. Tesla's almost mystical relationship with pigeons during his later years, particularly his special bond with one white bird he described loving as a man loves a woman, speaks to the universal human need for connection that transcends conventional relationships. When mainstream social bonds proved difficult for his sensitive nature, Tesla found alternative expressions of care and attachment. This capacity to discover connection, even in isolation, reflects the remarkable adaptability of human emotional needs and the many forms that meaningful relationship can take. The particular tenderness Tesla showed toward these birds reveals dimensions of his character, often obscured in accounts focusing solely on his intellectual achievements. Witnesses described how his voice and demeanor would soften when speaking, or about his avian companions, how he would save his limited resources to provide them with special foods, how he would tend injured birds with remarkable patience and gentleness. These weren't merely eccentric behaviors, but expressions of genuine care for beings whose existence he valued independently of their utility or relevance to his work. This capacity for relationship outside conventional human social structures allowed Tesla emotional sustenance during periods when human connections proved difficult or disappointing. His relationship with the natural world extended beyond these specific attachments to include a broader sensitivity to environmental patterns and balances. Long before ecological awareness became widespread, Tesla expressed concern about industrial practices that disrupted natural systems. His preference for harnessing renewable energy sources wasn't merely technical preference, but reflected deeper recognitions about sustainability and responsibility. These concerns weren't separate from his scientific work, but integral to his conception of beneficial technology, innovations that would enhance rather than diminish the complex living systems supporting human existence. Perhaps the most universal aspect of Tesla's journey is found in the contrast between his external circumstances and internal experience. Though often living in material luxury, particularly during his middle years, his most meaningful experiences were not of physical comfort, but of perceptual wonder, creative insight, and occasional moments of profound connection with both natural phenomena and select human companions. This distinction between circumstantial prosperity and genuine well-being reflects a fundamental truth encountered across cultures and eras, that the quality of human experience correlates only loosely with external conditions. This gap between external appearance and internal reality became especially evident in Tesla's later years, when material comfort diminished dramatically, yet his intellectual life remained vibrant. Visitors to his modest hotel room would find a man physically diminished yet mentally alert, still engaged with theoretical questions and maintaining his distinctive perspective. While his circumstances might have suggested decline or tragedy, to superficial observation, those who engaged more deeply with him often reported encountering a mind still capable of remarkable insight and a spirit maintaining essential dignity despite material reduction. This resilience in the face of changing fortune reflects not just personal fortitude, but embodiment of timeless wisdom about the distinction between having and being. The evolution of Tesla's understanding throughout his long life demonstrates another universal pattern, the movement from knowledge to wisdom. His early years focused primarily on acquisition of technical knowledge and development of practical applications. As he matured, his interests expanded to include broader questions about the implications of technology for human development and planetary well-being. In his final decades, his thinking increasingly addressed fundamental questions about consciousness, perception, and humanity's place within larger cosmic patterns. This developmental arc from practical mastery toward integrative understanding reflects wisdom traditions across cultures that recognize qualitatively different modes of knowing emerging at different life stages. This evolution wasn't abandonment of his earlier technical precision, but its integration within more comprehensive understanding. The same meticulous observation that characterized his laboratory work informed his later philosophical reflections, bringing empirical discipline to questions often approached through mere speculation. Simultaneously, the broader perspectives of his mature thinking brought new context to his technical innovations, helping him recognize their place within larger systems and longer time frames. This integration of detailed knowledge within holistic understanding characterizes wisdom development across traditions, suggesting that fullest human development requires both precise observation and expansive vision, both mastery of particular domains and recognition of their place within larger wholes. Tesla's lifelong appreciation for poetry and literature, alongside his scientific pursuits, reflects another universal pattern, the complementary relationship between different modes of knowing. He recognized that certain truths are best approached through measurement and calculation, while others require metaphor and narrative to be adequately expressed. Rather than privileging one mode over another, he maintained active engagement with both analytical and aesthetic approaches throughout his life. This integration allowed him access to different dimensions of reality, each valuable in its own context and most powerful when held in creative relationship with others. The particular quality of Tesla's literary appreciation revealed this complementary understanding. He didn't approach poetry merely as pleasant diversion from serious work, but recognized how metaphorical thinking sometimes provided access to insights unreachable through literal analysis alone. His extensive memorization of poetry wasn't mere display of mental capacity, but deliberate cultivation of linguistic patterns that expanded his conceptual vocabulary. This respect for multiple knowledge pathways places Tesla within a lineage of integrative thinkers who recognize that fullest understanding emerges not from privileging any single approach, but from allowing different modes of perception to illuminate each other. Tesla's navigation of the boundary between conventional understanding and unexplored territory demonstrates a universal developmental journey, the movement between security and exploration, between the known and the unknown. Throughout his life, he maintained connection with established scientific principles while simultaneously venturing beyond their recognized limits. This ability to respect existing knowledge without being constrained by it allowed him to build upon solid foundations while extending into new territory. His journey embodies the delicate balance between roots and wings, between grounding in shared understanding and freedom to explore beyond conventional boundaries. This balance became especially evident in Tesla's approach to his more speculative ideas. Even when pursuing concepts far beyond contemporary understanding, he insisted on empirical verification rather than mere theoretical elegance. His most revolutionary insights weren't ungrounded fantasies, but extensions of observable patterns carried into new domains through disciplined imagination. This combination of visionary reach and empirical grounding allowed him to venture far beyond conventional thinking without losing touch with physical reality, a balance that distinguishes genuine innovation from mere speculation across domains and throughout history. The particular quality of Tesla's creative adaptability in the face of changing circumstances reflects universal human resilience patterns. When laboratory fires destroyed years of work, when financial support evaporated mid-project, when public recognition shifted toward other inventors, he consistently found ways to continue his essential work despite radically altered conditions. This capacity for creative persistence without rigid attachment to particular methods or circumstances reveals a fundamental human ability to maintain core purpose while flexibly adapting to changing environments. This adaptive resilience became especially apparent in Tesla's later years when material resources diminished dramatically, yet essential creativity continued. With access to sophisticated laboratory equipment no longer possible, he developed methods of theoretical exploration requiring minimal physical apparatus. Without teams of assistants, he refined mental simulation techniques that allowed complex experimentation to occur within his visualization capacities. Without institutional support, he found alternative pathways for developing and sometimes sharing his continued insights. This persistent creativity under constraint demonstrates the remarkable human capacity to sustain essential purpose through radically changing circumstances when core values remain clear. Perhaps the most universally resonant aspect of Tesla's journey is found in his lifelong relationship with wonder. From childhood fascination with natural phenomena through his final years of theoretical exploration, he maintained capacity for genuine awe and reverence in the face of nature's patterns. This wasn't naive amazement, but the deepening wonder that can accompany increasing knowledge, recognition that greater understanding reveals more profound mysteries rather than exhausting them. His experience demonstrates that wonder need not diminish with knowledge, but can actually deepen when learning becomes not mere accumulation of facts, but expanding appreciation for the elegant complexity of natural systems. The particular quality of Tesla's wonder reveals integration rather than division between scientific and aesthetic perception. He didn't separate analytical understanding from appreciation of beauty, but recognized them as complementary dimensions of the same reality. The mathematical relationships underlying electromagnetic phenomena weren't merely useful formulas, but expressions of profound elegance that evoked genuine emotional response. This integration of objective understanding with subjective appreciation places Tesla within a tradition of scientists across eras who have recognized that fullest comprehension includes both precise measurement and receptive wonder, both analytical clarity and aesthetic response. Additional reflections on Tesla's scientific mind. Beyond the specific achievements that would eventually bear his name, there was a quality to Tesla's scientific thinking that set him apart from many contemporaries. His approach combined remarkable precision with unusual breadth, a capacity to focus intensely on practical details while simultaneously perceiving broader patterns and implications. This integration of focus and expansion, of practical engineering and theoretical vision, allowed him access to insights that more narrowly specialized minds might miss. The quality of Tesla's thinking revealed itself in the particular way he approached new problems. Unlike many inventors who began with existing solutions and sought incremental improvements, Tesla often started from fundamental principles, questioning basic assumptions that others took for granted. When developing his alternating current system, for instance, he didn't merely modify existing direct current approaches, but reconsidered the entire relationship between electricity generation and distribution. This willingness to return to foundational questions allowed him to envision possibilities obscured by conventional thinking. Tesla's relationship with mathematics demonstrated this same integrative quality. While capable of rigorous calculation, when needed, he understood mathematical relationships primarily as expressions of physical realities rather than as abstract formalisms. For him, equations weren't merely symbolic tools, but representations of actual energetic relationships he could visualize and sometimes directly perceive. This grounding of mathematical thinking in physical intuition gave his work a particular quality of embodied understanding, theoretical insights emerging from and returning to direct engagement with natural phenomena rather than remaining in abstract conceptual space. The evolution of Tesla's thinking throughout his life reveals an unusual trajectory, where many specialists deepen their expertise within increasingly narrow domains as they advance. Tesla's understanding became simultaneously more specific and more comprehensive over time. His early work with physical electricity generation and distribution systems informed later explorations of wireless energy transmission, which in turn influenced his thinking about potential relationships between electromagnetic phenomena and broader cosmic processes. This expanding spiral of understanding, each new insight informing both practical applications and theoretical perspectives, characterizes minds capable of both specialized mastery and integrative vision. Throughout his life, Tesla maintained a particular relationship with the unknown that balanced intellectual courage with empirical discipline. He was willing to pursue insights far beyond established understanding, yet insisted on experimental verification rather than speculative assertion. This combination of visionary reach and empirical grounding allowed him to extend knowledge frontiers without abandoning scientific rigor. The resulting body of work included both thoroughly documented innovations and more tentative explorations, seeds planted for future development rather than finished products. The temporal dimension of Tesla's scientific thinking deserves particular attention. While many inventors and entrepreneurs focused primarily on immediate applications, Tesla's vision routinely extended decades and sometimes centuries into the future. This extended timescale wasn't mere fantasy, but reflected genuine appreciation for how technological development unfolds across generations. Innovations requiring infrastructure changes or significant paradigm shifts often need multiple decades for full implementation, a reality Tesla understood through historical study and personal experience. This capacity to work within one time frame while envisioning possibilities in another allowed him to initiate processes whose completion he would never witness, but whose foundations required his pioneering insights. Perhaps the most distinctive quality of Tesla's scientific approach was his unusual integration of rational analysis with perceptual sensitivity. Where conventional science often privileges abstract reasoning over direct perception, Tesla maintained both capacities in productive relationship. His theoretical understanding was continuously informed by unusually acute observation, while his perceptual abilities were focused and refined through disciplined analysis. This complementary relationship between different knowing modes allowed him access to insights often missed by approaches relying predominantly on either abstract reasoning or unstructured perception. Tesla's relationship with nature. Throughout his life, Tesla maintained a relationship with the natural world characterized by both analytical understanding and genuine reverence. This wasn't divided experience of objective study separate from subjective appreciation, but integrated perception, where precision enhanced wonder rather than diminishing it. The mathematical elegance he discovered in electromagnetic relationships wasn't merely useful for practical applications, but evoked genuine aesthetic and sometimes emotional response, recognition of beauty inherent in nature's underlying patterns. This integrated perception began in childhood with direct immersion in natural environments. Young Nikola spent countless hours observing flowing water, atmospheric phenomena, plant growth patterns, and animal behaviors. These weren't merely casual observations, but intense studies undertaken with unusual focus and sensitivity. The same intense attention later directed toward laboratory experiments was first developed through patient observation of natural processes, watching how water formed vortices around obstacles, how plants oriented toward sunlight, how birds maintained stability in flight. These early naturalistic observations provided a foundation of pattern recognition that would later inform his technological innovations. Tesla's understanding of electricity itself revealed this integrated relationship with natural phenomena. Rather than conceptualizing electricity primarily through abstract models, he experienced it as a natural force with specific qualities and behaviors, an actual presence in the world rather than merely a theoretical construct. His descriptions of electrical phenomena often employed language suggesting relationship with a living entity possessing characteristic tendencies and patterns. This wasn't mere metaphorical language, but reflected genuine perception of electricity as an integral aspect of nature with its own inherent qualities rather than a purely human-defined concept. The particular quality of Tesla's relationship with thunderstorms reveals this integration of scientific understanding and direct appreciation. From childhood through his final years, lightning displays evoked in him a response combining analytical curiosity with something approaching reverence. During storms, he would often stand at windows or even outdoors, observing with absolute attention while others sought shelter. These weren't merely opportunities for gathering data, but experiences of communion with phenomena he recognized as fundamentally aligned with his own nature and work. The intensity of his response to these natural electrical displays suggests recognition of kindred energy, a force he knew both through objective study and subjective affinity. Throughout his adult life, Tesla maintained this same quality of attention to natural patterns across contexts, whether observing pigeons in city parks, wave formations on shorelines, or cloud structures in changing weather. He brought the same combination of analytical precision and receptive wonder that characterized his laboratory work. These weren't separate activities, but extensions of the same fundamental approach, careful attention to how energy manifests in various forms and contexts. This consistent observational practice across domains kept his thinking grounded in natural patterns rather than becoming enclosed within technological or theoretical frameworks. Tesla's preference for renewable energy sources, particularly hydroelectric power, wasn't merely practical choice, but reflected deeper understanding of natural energy flows. Having observed how water continuously cycles through evaporation, precipitation, and gravitational return, he recognized hydropower as participation in an existing pattern rather than extraction of finite resources. This perspective anticipated contemporary ecological consciousness by decades, suggesting an intuitive recognition of sustainability principles before they were formally articulated. His concerns about fossil fuel depletion expressed in the early 1900s similarly revealed understanding of natural systems and their limitations that exceeded conventional thinking of his era. Perhaps most profound was Tesla's recognition of human technology not as conquest over nature, but as alignment with natural principles. His most successful innovations weren't arbitrary inventions, but discoveries of possibilities inherent within natural systems, ways of working with existing patterns rather than imposing entirely human constructs upon them. This approach of collaborative relationship, rather than dominance, reflected both practical wisdom about effective engineering and philosophical perspective about humanity's place within larger natural systems. The enduring relevance of his work stems partly from this fundamental orientation of alignment rather than opposition, an approach increasingly recognized as essential for sustainable technological development. Tesla's daily rituals and habits. Behind the dramatic breakthroughs and public achievements of Tesla's life lay a foundation of consistent daily practices that supported his creative work. These weren't merely personal preferences, but carefully developed systems based on empirical observation of conditions that enhanced or hindered his unique cognitive functioning. By establishing supportive environmental patterns and behavioral rhythms, he created the stability necessary for his unusually sensitive nervous system to function optimally despite the inherent unpredictability of creative exploration. The spatial arrangement of Tesla's living and working environments followed precise patterns developed through years of self-observation. In hotel rooms that served as both home and office during much of his adult life, furniture placement followed mathematical relationships rather than conventional arrangements. Working materials were positioned at specific angles relative to light sources, with particular attention to shadow patterns and reflective qualities. These weren't arbitrary preferences, but deliberate optimizations based on observed correlations between spatial configurations and quality of thought. Through meticulous attention to these environmental details, Tesla created external order that supported internal clarity. His daily schedule maintained similar precision, with activities occurring at consistent times, established through empirical testing rather than social convention. The transition from sleep to waking followed specific protocols designed to preserve the liminal consciousness he found particularly valuable for certain types of creative thinking. Morning hours were typically reserved for theoretical exploration, midday for correspondence and necessary social engagements, afternoon for practical problem solving, and evening extending into early morning for his most intensive work periods. This temporal structure wasn't rigid constraint, but supportive framework, a rhythmic foundation that allowed creative freedom within established patterns. Tesla's approach to physical movement revealed similar emphasis on empirically derived patterns. His daily walks followed precise routes, determined not by destinations, but by observed effects on cognitive functioning. Certain walking rhythms and patterns he found particularly conducive to specific types of problem solving. Steady paces for linear development of established ideas, variable rhythms for generating new possibilities, particular cadences for integrating disparate concepts. These weren't mere superstitions, but practiced techniques based on observed correlations between physical movement patterns and cognitive processes, an embodied understanding of how neural functioning relates to bodily rhythms. Perhaps most distinctive among Tesla's daily practices was his use of metal spheres for sensory regulation. He would roll these perfectly machined balls between his palms at various times throughout the day, with particular attention to tactile sensations and the subtle vibrations they created. This practice served multiple functions, providing soothing, tactile input during periods of sensory overload, establishing precise rhythmic patterns that helped organize his thinking, and creating subtle vibrational fields he found conducive to certain types of perception. The effectiveness of this unusual technique likely related to his heightened tactile sensitivity and his capacity to detect subtle electromagnetic variations imperceptible to most observers. The evolution of Tesla's nutritional practices throughout his life revealed another dimension of his empirical approach to self-regulation. In early adulthood, he enjoyed rich foods and fine dining experiences, but gradually simplified his diet based on observed correlations between specific foods and optimal cognitive functioning. This wasn't arbitrary restriction, but deliberate selection, choosing foods found through experimental trials to support mental clarity and sustained energy, while eliminating those observed to create disruptive effects. His increasingly specific dietary requirements weren't mere eccentricity, but part of a comprehensive system designed to optimize conditions for his particular neurological makeup. Even Tesla's unusual sleeping patterns reflected empirical refinement rather than random peculiarity. Having observed that conventional 8-hour sleep cycles left him groggy and dull upon waking, he experimented with various alternatives until discovering that multiple shorter rest periods provided better cognitive results for his particular nervous system. During intensive work periods, he would typically take brief 20-minute naps every 4 hours, rather than longer consolidated sleep. This polyphasic pattern, though unconventional, allowed him to maintain productive work schedules aligned with his natural energy fluctuations rather than imposed social norms. The combined effect of these carefully developed daily practices created a supportive container for Tesla's creative work, a structured foundation that allowed his highly sensitive nervous system to function optimally, despite its vulnerability to disruption. The apparent contradictions in his nature, extraordinary sensitivity alongside remarkable productivity, visionary perception alongside practical invention, became complementary rather than conflicting within this carefully maintained daily ecology. Through deliberate cultivation of supportive patterns, he transformed potential liabilities of his unusual neurological makeup into distinctive creative strengths. Tesla's inner landscape. Behind the visible achievements and public persona of Nikola Tesla existed an inner landscape of unusual depth and complexity. The private experiences that informed his work remained largely hidden from public view during his lifetime, revealed only occasionally through journal entries, correspondence with close associates, and rare interviews where he spoke more personally. These glimpses into his subjective world reveal dimensions of experience that both drove and complicated his creative journey, internal realities as remarkable as his external contributions. Tesla's inner life was characterized by particular qualities of perception that differed fundamentally from ordinary experience. From childhood, he perceived various forms of energy not merely conceptually, but through direct sensory awareness, seeing distinctive halos around objects and people, hearing subtle harmonics in apparently simple sounds, feeling electromagnetic variations as tangible phenomena. These weren't hallucinations or metaphorical descriptions, but consistent perceptual differences, likely related to neurological variations in his sensory processing systems. Throughout his life, he navigated the challenge of translating these direct perceptions into conventional scientific language, finding ways to verify through objective measurement what he initially encountered through subjective experience. The visual dimension of Tesla's inner experience deserves particular attention for its role in his creative process. Unlike conventional visual imagination that most experience as fleeting and somewhat ghostly, Tesla's mental imagery had a solidity and persistence approaching physical perception. The machines he visualized could be examined from multiple angles, observed in operation over extended periods, adjusted and refined entirely within mental space before any physical prototype existed. This extraordinary visualization capacity wasn't merely useful technical ability, but created a distinctive relationship between thought and materiality, a perceptual bridge between possible and actual that allowed him to develop innovations through internal processes before external implementation. These unusual perceptual abilities created both extraordinary opportunities and significant challenges throughout Tesla's life. The direct sensory access they provided to electromagnetic phenomena allowed insights that more conventional perception might miss, Yet their divergence from common experience often left him isolated in his understanding. Even sympathetic colleagues sometimes struggled to comprehend observations he considered self-evident, creating communication gaps that complicated both personal relationships and professional collaboration. The translations he performed daily between his direct perceptions and conventional scientific frameworks required considerable energy and sometimes created profound fatigue, a hidden cost behind his public productivity. Throughout his life, Tesla experienced states of consciousness that would now likely be recognized as involving synesthesia, the neurological mixing of sensory channels where stimulation in one sense creates response in another. He described how certain sounds would evoke specific visual patterns, how physical textures created distinctive taste experiences, how visual images sometimes generated physical sensations. These weren't poetic metaphors, but actual perceptual experiences that influenced how he encountered and processed information. His comprehensive understanding of wave phenomena across different energy forms may have been facilitated by this natural neurological tendency to perceive connections between seemingly separate sensory channels. The emotional dimension of Tesla's inner landscape revealed similar complexity and intensity. His capacity for focused attention and persistent work coexisted with periods of overwhelming sensitivity when ordinary stimuli became nearly unbearable. The same neurological differences that allowed extraordinary perception also created vulnerability to sensory overload, requiring elaborate compensatory strategies to maintain functional balance. His apparently eccentric behaviors, specific number patterns, precise material arrangements, avoidance of certain textures and sounds, weren't arbitrary preferences, but necessary accommodations for a nervous system processing information at unusual intensity and volume. Tesla's emotional responses to natural beauty revealed particular intensity throughout his life. Certain sunset colorations, cloud formations, mountain vistas, or wave patterns could trigger experiences approaching ecstasy, moments of perception so intense they temporarily suspended his analytical faculties. These weren't merely aesthetic appreciations, but experiences of recognition and resonance, as though encountering external manifestations of patterns he intuited internally. This emotional resonance with natural phenomena informed his scientific understanding, suggesting connections and possibilities that analytical thinking alone might not have revealed. The integration of emotional response and intellectual comprehension created a knowing that was simultaneously precise and holistic. Perhaps most remarkable within Tesla's inner landscape was his experience of time. Where conventional perception typically experiences time as linear flow at relatively constant rate, Tesla described how his subjective time sense could dramatically expand or contract depending on his attentional state. During periods of intense creative focus, hours might pass in what felt like minutes, while moments of particular perceptual clarity sometimes expanded to seem nearly eternal. This fluid temporality wasn't merely subjective illusion, but created actual differences in information processing capacity, allowing completion in brief chronological periods of mental operations that would normally require much longer duration. His unusual relationship with time created both creative advantages and practical challenges throughout his life. The social dimension of Tesla's inner experience revealed particular complexity. While capable of charm and eloquence in controlled settings, he experienced prolonged social interaction as increasingly depleting, each exchange requiring elaborate translation between his natural perceptual language and conventional communication. This wasn't mere introversion, but reflection of actual neurological differences in how his system processed social information alongside other stimuli. What might appear as aloof reclusiveness to casual observers was often necessary self-preservation, managing limited energy resources by restricting input during particularly demanding creative periods. Throughout Tesla's personal writings runs acknowledgement of the double-edged nature of his unusual mind, recognition that the same perceptual differences creating his greatest insights also generated his most significant challenges. This wasn't self-pity, but clear-eyed assessment of his distinctive neurological makeup. with both its remarkable capacities and its inherent limitations. His lifelong development of compensatory strategies, from environmental modifications to behavioral routines, represents not denial of these differences, but sophisticated adaptation, allowing optimal functioning within their parameters. The resulting balance between vulnerability and capacity, between limitation and possibility, characterizes not just Tesla's particular journey, but broader patterns of human development within neurological diversity. Tesla's vision of human potential. Beyond his specific technological contributions, Tesla developed a broader vision of human possibility that both informed his work and extended beyond it. This wasn't mere speculation about future inventions, but cohesive perspective on human development, a vision of how technological evolution might support broader cultural and consciousness changes. While some aspects of this vision appeared in his published writings and public addresses, its fullest expressions emerged in private correspondence and conversations with close associates, where he could speak more freely about implications extending beyond conventional scientific frameworks. Central to Tesla's vision was recognition of vast untapped human potential, capacities for perception, understanding, and creation far exceeding what most individuals realized in ordinary circumstances. This wasn't naive optimism, but empirically based assessment drawing from both historical study and personal experience. Having observed how his own perceptual abilities expanded through deliberate cultivation, he recognized similar potential existing within human consciousness more broadly, requiring only appropriate conditions and development practices to manifest. The technological innovations he pursued weren't merely external tools, but potential catalysts for this internal development, creating environmental conditions more conducive to expanded human functioning. Tesla's understanding of technology's relationship to human development differed fundamentally from many contemporaries. Where others often saw technology primarily as means for conquering nature or acquiring material goods, Tesla envisioned it as potential liberation from unnecessary constraints, freeing human attention and energy for higher creative and perceptual development. His pursuit of labor-saving innovations and wireless power transmission reflected this perspective, aiming not merely at material convenience, but at creating conditions where humanity might dedicate greater resources toward consciousness development rather than mere survival or comfort. This vision anticipated much later cultural movements exploring relationships between technological and spiritual evolution. The particular quality of Tesla's perspective on human potential involved unusual integration between scientific understanding and what might now be termed consciousness studies. Unlike many scientists who relegated questions of consciousness to religious or philosophical domains outside empirical investigation, Tesla approached awareness itself as natural phenomenon worthy of careful study and potential development. His own experiences of different consciousness, states during various phases of his creative process, informed this approach, suggesting that awareness itself might be understood and developed through empirical observation rather than mere speculation. This integration of objective and subjective dimensions created a distinctive vision, combining technological and consciousness evolution within single developmental framework. Throughout his mature writings runs recognition of relationship between individual and collective development. Tesla understood that even the most gifted individuals could only flourish within supportive cultural contexts, while broader cultural advancement required contributions from precisely those individuals whose perceptions and capacities extended beyond conventional boundaries. This recognition created in him both appreciation for social conditions that had supported his own development and concern about cultural factors limiting human potential more broadly. His vision of beneficial technology included creating conditions where more individuals might develop and express their unique capacities, rather than having creative potential suppressed by necessary but limited focus on basic survival needs. Tesla's perspective on education revealed this same concern with human potential. Having experienced both the benefits of formal academic training and its potential limitations for unconventional minds, He advocated educational approaches that would balance structured knowledge transmission with cultivation of innate perceptual and creative capacities. His own development had required both disciplined study and freedom for self-directed exploration, an integration he believed essential for optimal human development regardless of individual neurological differences. While valuing specialized expertise, he cautioned against narrowness that might prevent recognition of connections across domains where most significant insights often emerged. Perhaps most distinctive in Tesla's vision of human potential was his understanding of relationship between technological and biological evolution. Unlike many contemporaries who viewed these as separate domains, he recognized potential interactions between advancing technology and human neurological development, not through crude mechanical intervention, but through creating environmental conditions supporting natural emergence of latent capacities. The electromagnetic technologies he developed weren't merely external tools, but potential influences on the electromagnetic system of the human nervous system itself, possibly catalyzing perception and understanding beyond conventional limitations. This perspective anticipated much later scientific exploration of relationships between environmental fields and neurological functioning. The temporal dimension of Tesla's vision deserves particular attention. While many visionaries focused primarily on changes possible within single generation, Tesla routinely thought in terms of evolutionary timeframes spanning centuries or even millennia. This wasn't escapism from immediate concerns, but recognition, based in historical understanding of how fundamental transformations in human capacity and culture typically unfold across multiple generations. By maintaining this expanded temporal perspective alongside focused attention to immediate technological development, he positioned his work within longer evolutionary context, planting seeds for developments whose full flowering he recognized might emerge long after his individual contribution concluded. Throughout his life, Tesla navigated the tension between technological development and ethical consideration, with unusual awareness for his era. Unlike many innovators focused primarily on what could be created, he maintained consistent attention to what should be developed, based on likely human and environmental impacts. His cautions about potential destructive applications of directed energy technologies, alongside his vision of their beneficial possibilities, revealed this ethical dimension. Similarly, his early advocacy for renewable energy sources reflected consideration of long-term environmental impacts decades before such concerns became widespread. This integration of technical innovation with ethical foresight created a comprehensive vision, addressing not merely what humanity could make, but what would genuinely support beneficial development. Tesla and the creative process. The particular quality of Tesla's creative process offers insights extending beyond his specific achievements into the nature of innovation itself. The patterns through which his discoveries emerged weren't merely personal idiosyncrasies, but reveal something fundamental about how transformative insights develop, especially those representing genuine paradigm shifts rather than incremental improvements. By examining how Tesla's most significant breakthroughs occurred, we glimpse aspects of creativity that transcend individual biography and illuminate broader patterns of human discovery and invention. Perhaps most striking in Tesla's creative process was the central role of receptive awareness preceding active development. His most revolutionary insights typically began not with deliberate problem-solving, but with periods of open attention, states where he suspended specific goals and allowed perception to occur without immediate analysis or application. Only after initial patterns or possibilities emerged through this receptive phase would he engage more structured thinking to examine, refine, and develop what had been received. This rhythmic alternation between receptivity and active development characterized his entire creative life, suggesting that genuine innovation requires both capacities working in complementary relationship rather than exclusive focus on directed effort. The embodied nature of Tesla's creative process deserves particular attention. Unlike purely abstract thinking disconnected from physical experience, his insights emerge through multi-sensory engagement, visual, kinesthetic, and sometimes auditory, perception working together to grasp relationships that purely conceptual understanding might miss. His famous walks weren't merely opportunities for reflection, but active components of his creative process, the rhythmic physical movement somehow facilitating particular types of mental patterning. This integration of physical and mental dimensions suggests that most profound creativity emerges not from disembodied intellect, but from whole system intelligence engaging multiple modes of knowing simultaneously. Throughout Tesla's creative life ran consistent recognition of incubation periods, intervals of apparent inactivity that were actually essential components of the innovative process. After intensive engagement with particular problems, he would deliberately set them aside, turning attention elsewhere while unconscious processing continued. He discovered through experience that solutions often emerged with surprising completeness after such intervals, suggesting that certain types of complex problem-solving require processing beyond conscious direction. This pattern of deliberate engagement, followed by strategic disengagement, followed by subsequent insight, characterizes many significant creative breakthroughs across domains, revealing something fundamental about how human cognition resolves complex challenges. The visual dimension of Tesla's creative process played particularly significant role. Unlike purely verbal or mathematical thinking, his primary creative mode involved detailed multidimensional imagery that could be manipulated, observed from various perspectives, and tested through mental simulation. This wasn't mere visualization technique, but fundamental cognitive approach, allowing simultaneous perception of multiple relationships and possibilities that sequential logical processes might miss. The resulting insights often arrived not as gradual deductions, but as comprehensive gestalts, complete patterns perceived all at once rather than assembled piece by piece. This holistic mode of understanding complemented his capacity for precise analytical thinking, creating unusual integration between big-picture perception and detailed implementation. Tesla's creative relationship with natural models deserves special recognition. His most significant innovations weren't arbitrary inventions, but discoveries of possibilities suggested by careful observation of natural systems. The rotating magnetic field that formed the basis of his alternating current motor emerged partly through observing vortex patterns in flowing water. His understanding of resonance in electrical systems developed through studying how vibrations propagate through different materials and environments. This biomimetic approach, learning from patterns already present in natural systems rather than imposing entirely artificial constructs, characterized his most enduring contributions and suggests a creative orientation increasingly recognized as essential for sustainable innovation. The collaborative dimension of Tesla's creativity, though less obvious than his individual brilliance, played significant role in his development. While often working alone during actual invention, his thinking was continuously informed by ongoing dialogue with both contemporaries and predecessors through extensive reading, correspondence, and occasional deep conversation with select colleagues. Ideas encountered through these exchanges weren't merely adopted or rejected, but actively transformed through integration with his unique perspective. Neither pure originality nor mere derivation, but genuine synthesis, creating something greater than either isolated individual thinking or uncritical acceptance of existing frameworks would allow. Perhaps most instructive about Tesla's creative process was his unusual relationship with failure. Rather than becoming discouraged when initial approaches proved unsuccessful, he maintained persistent curiosity about what each unsuccessful attempt revealed about the underlying principles involved. Failed experiments weren't wasted effort, but valuable data providing guidance toward more promising directions. This transformative relationship with apparent setbacks, extracting useful information from disappointing results rather than experiencing them as mere obstacles, allowed continuous progress through learning cycles that might have halted less resilient innovators. The resulting resilience wasn't mere stubborn persistence, but sophisticated learning strategy, converting all experience, whether conventionally successful or not, into valuable guidance. Throughout Tesla's creative life, Certain rhythms appeared, consistently. Periods of broad exploration followed by focused development, intervals of public engagement alternating with protected solitude, phases of practical implementation complemented by theoretical expansion. These weren't random fluctuations, but necessary oscillations between complementary modes of creative functioning. By honoring rather than resisting these natural rhythms, he maintained remarkable productivity across decades without burning out. A sustainable creative practice, allowing continuous innovation rather than isolated breakthrough, followed by depletion. This integrated approach to creative work across multiple timeframes offers valuable perspective for understanding how transformative innovation unfolds, not as isolated events, but as ongoing developmental process. The most profound aspect of Tesla's creative approach may have been his capacity to work simultaneously at multiple levels of scale, addressing immediate practical problems while maintaining awareness of broader principles and longer-term implications. This multi-level attention allowed him to develop specific solutions that simultaneously advanced more comprehensive understanding, creating unusual integration between practical invention and theoretical insight. Individual achievements became not merely discrete products, but components of evolving systemic understanding, each specific innovation contributing to greater comprehension of electromagnetic principles while translating that broader understanding into practical applications. This continuous movement between specific and general, between concrete implementation and abstract principle, characterizes creative work of lasting significance across domains. Gentle closure continued. As our exploration of Tesla's remarkable mind draws toward completion, perhaps what remains most valuable isn't any particular invention or insight, but the quality of integrated intelligence his life demonstrates. In an age of increasing specialization, his capacity to combine precise technical mastery with expansive vision, analytical rigor with intuitive perception, scientific methodology with aesthetic appreciation, offers a model of wholeness increasingly relevant to contemporary challenges. The boundaries he navigated fluidly, between theory and application, between empirical observation and creative imagination, between individual insight and collective development, remain territories where most significant human advancement continues to emerge. The particular texture of Tesla's attention, his capacity for both intense focus and expansive awareness, for both detailed analysis and pattern recognition across domains, reminds us of perceptual possibilities often underdeveloped in conventional education and work environments. His lifelong cultivation of these complementary capacities suggests potential existing within human awareness generally, awaiting only appropriate conditions and practices for development. In a world often fragmented by hyper-specialization, his integrative approach offers gentle reminder that our most valuable insights often emerge precisely at the intersections between seemingly separate fields and methods. As you continue drifting toward sleep, allow your awareness to settle into the same receptive state that Tesla found so valuable for his deepest insights. Without effort or expectation, simply notice the natural rhythm of your breath, the subtle weight of your body against supporting surfaces, the gradual transition from active thinking toward the quiet currents of pre-sleep consciousness. This liminal space between waking and sleeping, neither fully directed nor completely unconscious, holds particular creative potential, a state where unexpected connections and perspectives sometimes emerge without deliberate seeking. The same processes of energy transformation that fascinated Tesla throughout his life continue their work within your body at this very moment. Electrical potentials flowing across neural membranes, chemical signals moving between cells, electromagnetic fields generated by your heart's rhythm and your brain's activity. These aren't separate from the natural phenomena he studied, but expressions of the same fundamental principles operating at different scales. As awareness of external surroundings gradually diminishes, you might notice how internal sensations become more apparent, the subtle currents of your own living system continuing their coordinated activity without conscious direction. Just as Tesla recognized how seemingly different manifestations of energy were actually expressions of unified underlying principles, you might notice how various aspects of your own experience, physical sensations, emotional colorations, mental, images and conceptual understanding, are not separate categories but integrated dimensions of single awareness. This recognition of wholeness within apparent diversity characterized Tesla's scientific understanding and his broader worldview. As sleep approaches, this same integrative perception naturally emerges when the mind's categorizing activity begins to soften, allowing experience to be received more directly before analysis divides it into separate components. The quiet wisdom of your body knows precisely how to navigate this transition from waking to sleeping, a journey requiring no effort or management, but only gradual surrender to processes evolved over millions of years of human development. Tesla's profound trust in natural intelligence, alongside his appreciation for conscious understanding, reflects this same complementary relationship between deliberate awareness and innate wisdom. As you release the day's concerns and questions, trust that deeper aspects of your intelligence continue their essential work even as conscious direction diminishes. Integration occurring below the threshold of awareness, preparing both body and mind for tomorrow's renewal. Whatever aspects of Tesla's journey have resonated most strongly with your own experience, allow them to settle gently into your awareness without need for analysis or conclusion. Like seeds coming to rest in fertile soil, these points of connection may continue developing in their own timing, perhaps emerging in dreams tonight, perhaps informing waking thoughts tomorrow, perhaps remaining as subtle influences below conscious recognition. Just as Tesla understood that his most meaningful contributions might unfold their full significance long after his direct involvement concluded, trust that whatever holds value in this shared exploration will continue its natural development in its own perfect timing. As sleep draws nearer, you might notice how thoughts become increasingly fluid and dreamlike, images and ideas flowing one into another without the sharp boundaries and linear sequences of fully waking consciousness. This natural transition between cognitive states happens every night, though usually without our deliberate awareness or appreciation. Tesla's recognition of how different consciousness states offered access to different types of understanding, analytical clarity in certain phases, intuitive connection in others, reminds us that full human intelligence includes many modes of knowing, each valuable in appropriate context and most powerful. When working in complementary relationship, the same cosmic energies that inspired Tesla's lifelong wonder now hold you in their embrace, supporting your body, calming your mind, renewing your spirit. Rest well in this knowledge, allowing sleep to arrive in its own perfect timing, a natural current carrying you toward morning's shore. Whatever tomorrow brings, you'll meet it refreshed and renewed, having completed another cycle in the continuous rhythm of activity and rest that sustains all life. In this perfect balance between doing and being, between expression and receptivity, between conscious direction and trusting surrender, lies wisdom Tesla recognized throughout his remarkable journey. Wisdom your body knows intimately and demonstrates with each completed day and restful night.